Hello everyone, welcome to one more video of this dialogue system tutorial series for Unity. And today we are finally going to cover branching. So we're going to step aside from our linear dialogue and we're going to advance towards branching and having multiple options in our dialogue, but still writing them in a very simple to read and write fashion using YAML. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to focus today is on what structure are we going to use to write our dialogue in YAML file. And then after that, we are going to change our dialogue manager file in order to write the algorithm to work when an option appears instead of a simple line of dialogue. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing that we need to do in order to create options in dialogues is to define how we are going to write them in our text file. So what is the structure that we're going to use? So here I have the dialogue that we have been using for the past two videos, which is just a very simple linear dialogue where you only have the character as a key and then the line that it's going to speak, and then we just do this and repeat it for every line that we want. And now we are going to break this kind of simple structure and start to make it a little bit more complex. So the way that we're going to do this is the following. So whenever we want an option, we're going to start and create a key that is going to be specific and unique to options. And this key, it's better that its name is not equal to any name of a game object in your scene. So I will use the question mark. Okay? And inside the question mark, instead of then having a simple string, I'm now going to have an array. And this array is going to be comprised of the number of elements that I want to be equal to the options. So if I want two options, it will have two elements. If I want three options, it is going to have three elements, etc. and etc. And I'm going to call them 1 as a key and 2 as a key. So once again, question mark is a key that has inside of it not a string but an array. This array is comprised by two elements, one which key is number 1 and another one which key is number 2. So inside our option number 1, I am first of all going to create also an array, and this array will start by a line that is not spoken by any person. So this line is going to be the line that is going to be placed in our button, so our option, what we're going to see and that we can click and select. And so let's write, for example, something like, "Are you okay?" And after this, we can now start doing a linear dialogue kind of thing as we did before, but now instead of being in this level of indentation, we're going to be in this level of indentation after our number 1 key. And now, for example, we can say, "Peter, what does Peter says when you choose the option 'Are you okay?'" "Holly, are you fine?" And Holly responds, "Yes, everything is fine, thanks." And then we end with an EOD. And the same thing is going to happen with option number 2. Okay, so this is the structure that we are going to use. So in order to summarize, our algorithm is going to firstly just do that normal stuff of detecting the speaker and then printing the line until it reaches either an EOD where it ends dialogue or until it finds this question mark. When it finds this question mark, the algorithm has to change, and he's going to place these two lines here inside the text of a button, and then according to the button that it chooses, that is going to be clicked on, then he's going to choose one of these two paths, and after that he will start doing the previous algorithm again where he just checks the speaker and then which line it is, and then it does that again until it finds or an EOD or another question mark. Okay, so this is going to be how we are going to structure our dialogue, and as you can see, it's quite simple to read, it's quite simple to follow, and and that's it for now. Okay everybody, so we're now back here in Unity, and I've made just a small couple of changes to our last between our last video scene and this video, and here in our editor was just simply by adding these two buttons here. So I created this button 1 and this button 2. And this can be simply created by going to Canvas, hitting the right button, going to UI, and then here you have it, button. I only did this, and then I just made them a little bit larger and then positioned them in whatever I wanted, and you can do whatever you want with this, okay? So we just need a couple of buttons for this exercise. So now we can go to the script, to our dialog manager script. And I also made here a couple of changes. And the first one was that I added a public variable called buttons. And this variable buttons is a list of game objects, and you can define how big this list is going to be directly in our editor. We're going to do that in a second. And I also created this deactivate buttons and activate button functions. And these are very simple. So this deactivate buttons function just loops through every button in our buttons game object list and sets it to false, and also sets its text to nothing, okay? This get component in children function basically goes to the children of our game object, finds for a component called text in the children, and then changes its variables. And as you can see here, when you create a button, it comes attached with a text component, okay? So basically it's going to this text component, and it's going to change whatever there is to nothing, so that when we deactivate a button, we basically eliminate everything that was written in it. And then the activate button, the only thing that it does for now is, well, to activate it. And contrarily to the deactivate buttons, and you're going to understand why in a second, we are just going to activate a button at a time. So we're going to receive as an argument the button that we want to activate, and we are going to activate it with this function button.setActive to true. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is to homogenize everything a little bit. So we're going to place this speaker function here to determine the speaker. We're going to make it before we checking if this line 0 is EOD. And if you recall, since I usually write EOD for both the key and for the line as well, to homogenize everything, and you're going to see why also in a bit, I'm going to check not if line 0.string is EOD, but if the actual key, which is speaker, is equal to EOD. Okay? So what this is going to do is, if speaker is equal to EOD, it's going to do this function here, and I should state that, else he's going to do this printing of the line. What we want now is we want a third kind of algorithm where the speaker is not an EOD, but is something specific. And this specificity in my case, if you recall, is just a question mark. So if this, So if the speaker is equal to a question mark, it's going to do something different than printing a line. Okay, that's simple. So the first thing we want to do is to place the text display as nothing. So when we have our buttons with the text inside the buttons, we don't want a dialog box to have anything. Okay, we just want to see what the options are and nothing else. And now what we want to do firstly is to activate the number of buttons equal to the number of options that we have. So in our case, we only have 2 buttons, but if we had 10 buttons, we could have in some cases, just 3 options, so only 3 buttons needed to be activated, or 5 options and only 5 buttons needed to be activated, etc., etc. So for that, we are going to first of all state that a new variable JSON data called options is going to be equal to line 0. And so if you recall, this is line, okay? Line is going to be all of this, and line 0 is going to be whatever is inside the key. In this case, is this array, okay? So options, line 0 is going to be this array that is comprised by the elements 1 and element 2. And now we can loop through the elements, and we can do that by creating a new variable called options number equal to 0, and it goes until it's less then options dot count, and options number plus plus. So this is going to loop through all of my options inside the array options, okay, until options dot count, which is the number of elements that exists inside the options array. And we want for each one to activate the corresponding button, which is buttons options number. So it's going to activate button 0 and buttons 1 in this case. So we're also going to place the writing of the text of the button inside the activate button function. So we're going to pass to this activate button also the choices themselves. So not the full array, but just the array inside number 1 to button number 1 and the array of number 2 to number 2, okay, easily. And so for that we're going to pass options number also here as well. So here in our activate button we need also now to receive a JSON data called, that I'm going to call choice, and we are going to print a text in our button, and this text is going to be choice 0 dot toString. And why 0? Well, if you recall how YAML and the parsing from JSON, LeetJSON does stuff, is that so options is this, okay? Option 0 is going to be the array inside the element 1, so this is going to be options 0, and option 00 is the first element of said array, which is going to be are you okay or have you seen Williams. So that's why we print choice 00 dot toString in our button. And actually, if we now come here to Unity, I hope there's no errors. Everything seems fine. We can go to Dialog Manager. We can say that we want our buttons to be of size 2. Set the first button. Set the second button to the second slot. And before everything, we should come back to our start function and create our start function, which we have deleted in our last video, and deactivate buttons in the beginning. So each time that the dialog manager begins, instead of you having to remember if you have, hidden your buttons in the beginning or not, we are going to also, we always call in the beginning of dialog manager our deactivate buttons function. Now we can hit play. As you can see, no buttons are presented here. We can go here to the trigger that we have made in the last video. Start talking with the lady, and when it reaches the exact moment of the question mark, there you go, the text disappears, and then the correct text appears in these two buttons. Of course, for now, these buttons do nothing, so I can press them and nothing happens. So, half of it is done, and now we need to make the buttons actually do something, okay? And so for that, we're going to create a function called toDoOnClick. JSON data that receives a JSON data choice. And what we want to do after we click is that we want to print a line, okay? And then to deactivate the buttons, okay? But there's an interesting thing that we need to do here. So if we come back here to print line, we state that line is always equal to our dialog index, okay? And we don't want this because dialog index is something that is in this layer here, in this indentation, okay? So I'm going to create a new variable that I'm going to call private JSON data called current layer. And here I'm going to say that current layer is equal to dialog. And so here I'm going to state current layer. So basically I did nothing. I just copied dialog to current layer and then changed it wherever I needed to change. But what I want to do now is that whenever I have a button, when I click in a button, I want to change layers. So I want to move from this indentation layer here to this one. Okay, so I can do this by saying that my current layer is actually going to be our choice 0. Okay, once again, the choice is the choice that we have. Oh, sorry, not here. My mistake. Oh, sorry, here. Okay. And this choice is going to be one of the two choices that we have made, and we're going which basically is this here or this here, depending on the button. And the first element of choice is going to be the array itself. So this. And when we are in the array itself, we can start, incrementing index again from the beginning and just do the regular algorithm that we have. The only difference is that instead of starting in index 0, we are going to start in index 1, because index 0 is going to be the one that is printed on the button, and the index 1 is going to be the one that actually is going to be printed as a linear dialog, as we did before. So we're going to state here that index is going to be equal to 1. So we are going to change the layer, set the first line to be printed as index 1, we're going to print a line and then deactivate the buttons. So the only thing that is left for us to do is basically to link this function to whenever the player clicks on set button. So we are going here to our activate button function, and after setting the text, we are going to use a function which is called onClick.addListener. And this is going to add a function to when the player clicks in this button. Okay, as simple as that. And here we are going to delegate so that we can, have arguments to this listener, and the to-do onClick. And we're going to pass the choice. And now we do this. Okay, there you go. So we're going to add the first choice to the first button and the second choice to the second button. And now we of course need to remove all of the listeners whenever the buttons are deactivated, and we can do this here on the deactivate buttons function. So just in case, every time that we deactivate a button, we want to go to the button component inside the button and onClick remove all listeners. Okay, so there are no listeners active when a button is deactivated. So we go back here to our scene in Unity. We can hit play. We can go here to talk to Holly again. There you go, talk, talk, talk. This appears, then we choose the first option, and there you go. Peter just continues with his conversation depending on the choice. And it continues, and the EOD has appeared, and the dialogue has ended. And just to confirm that everything is doing fine, we can talk to Holly again. Instead of that, choosing the last option, and then there you go, the option has changed. Okay, so we now have a fully functioning dialogue system that works with this very kind of simple layout, and you can do whatever you want in terms of choices. So once again, just to summarize, we needed to add a new algorithm whenever this question mark appeared. And basically this algorithm needed to do two things. So first of all, we need to activate the number of buttons depending on the number of choices that we had. We can do that with the activate button function. And then we needed to also add a listener, which is basically add a function that is activated when something happened. In this case, it was an onClick. And this function to do onClick would only change our layer, so from this to one of these two, and then restart the count to index number 1, so that we can now start to increment the index and printing it once again. Okay, and so that is all for now. I imagine that you might have a lot of questions, so please leave a comment below and I will try to be as brief and as clear as I can in answering to them. This isn't exactly the easiest of subjects, and I haven't been doing tutorials, as you know, for a long time. So maybe things aren't as clear and as well explained as I would like them to. But anyway, you have the code, you can use the code, you can try to decode what's written there, and you can ask how many questions you want, so please feel free. On the next session, we are now going to focus on special functions, which mainly are linking animations or audio to each line. And I guess that's that for now. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that this has helped you to understand how this works. And I mean, if you eventually use this in any of your projects, please, let me know. I would like to see what you do to this, or what you add and what you don't use. And well, thank you once again, and see you next time. Bye.